Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the City Commission workshop. This 16th day of November, 2021. This workshop is called to continue our discussions with regard to the Bahia project. And we have here today, I believe, the developers and their representatives, and also I'm here to report on meetings and negotiations that we've been having. So, in reference to the applicant, do you want to go first and tell us a little bit about where you feel we are, and then I can corroborate? Mr. Lockery.
Certainly.
Good morning. Wait a minute. Wait, before you begin. I have to read this. So we are hosting this meeting both in person and virtually. And anyone who wishes to participate in the meeting virtually, please go to our website at www.gov/City Commission Meetings. Again, that's www.fortlauderdale.gov/City Commission Meetings. To help ensure decorum, we ask that you please abide by the following guidelines, which for some reason you gave me the abbreviated version, Mr. Clerk, but I can tell you what they are. Don't attack a city commissioner or the mayor, ever. If you do so, do make sure we don't hear you. Just when you are online and you are called to speak, please put your computer, take yourself off mute, and you'll be allowed to give your presentation. And then once you've concluded, please remute yourself. If you'd like to stay on with the meeting, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, you're finished. So I'm sure the recitation said it more accurately and articulately than I just did. But anyone is Commissioner Vice Mayor Moritas? Is she online?
Yes, Mayor, I can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. I hope you're feeling better. I'm sorry you can't appear today, but you can hear us, right?
I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Lockery. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Robert Lockery on behalf of your tenant, Bahia Mar, joined here today by John Millage, as well as my co-counsel, as well as members of the ownership team of Bahia Mar. First, thank you for scheduling the workshop. This is becoming a quarterly event, I think. As we all know, earlier this year, your tenant came before you with a proposal to extend the existing ground lease which exists on the Bahia Mar property. As a result of those discussions, the City Commission asked the owner, the Bahia Mar rather, to go back to take another look at the site plan and to address several issues. In addition to that, we were asked to meet directly with the mayor and with the district commissioner to continue those discussions and talk about how the project may be redesigned. I think there were some clear indications that came out of that meeting, some things that you requested of the developer. First, to reduce the number of residential units, to reduce the number of buildings overall and the number of high-rise buildings in particular, to reduce the amount of commercial uses on the property. One of the other items as it relates to actual buildings was to remove the high-rise buildings that were on the north finger of the property. And candidly, that had always been a concern of the mayor and the district commissioner, even before they were in their current roles, but when they served other capacities with the city. To increase the number of hotel units on the site and to make sure that those units were branded as a luxury hotel. And for that matter, to incorporate that luxury branding resort lifestyle throughout the entire project, and to increase the amount of open space and park area within the overall project. The applicant then went back to its designers and architects and began to reimagine the project really from scratch, using the basis of what they had as far as the streets were comprised of, as far as the boardwalk around the site, but to see what could be done to further enhance that development site. And I think, Mayor, at the last time we met in July, you called that Phase 1. And as a result of that, when we presented this in front of the workshop before the City Commission at a workshop back on July 6th, we presented a revitalized project that we believe met many of those goals, which we'll talk about. I think it's also important to note that the planners, as they were going through that exercise, was also sensitive to the needs of the boat show And we're looking ahead to the types of things that the boat show would see as an enhancement from what was previously approved by a former commission. But this commission also made that a very important component. So as we entered what we might call phase 2, which began on July 6th, there were some other elements included. Number one, to go back to the boat show folks, and thank you both to the mayor and vice mayor for helping facilitate those meetings, to have those meetings, get the parties together, and then to also come back at the next time we met, which happens to be today, with the financials for the project, with the financial proposal that the applicant's making, so that you all can begin to evaluate that and begin to give further direction to the city attorney and city manager on how to proceed with actual lease negotiations, which will culminate ultimately in a lease that'll have to go through a public hearing process back in front of the city commission. So to take a step back and go through the changes that were made, the original project, as it's currently approved, has 237 boat slips, and all 237 boat slips are remaining. The current approved project has 651 residential units. What is being proposed now, and 651 residential units and 256 hotel rooms. What's being proposed now is 350 residential units with an additional 256 hotel rooms plus 60 hotel residences, which will also be under the same kind of regime as the residences, but will be in the hotel building itself.
Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Certainly.
what you're saying now, we just still have that Bahia Mar blank screen. Is anything that you're saying supposed to be showing?
No, I'll go through that in just a minute.
Okay.
Just kind of giving you the overview, and then I'll
Okay,
get
I just wanted to make sure, because,
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I know.
okay.
I would have forgotten. Thank you very much for that, but in this case, I actually didn't yet.
Robert, can you just say those numbers again? Just
Certainly.
the current ones are.
And they will be on the screen in just a minute. So 237 boat slips are currently approved for the property, and the proposal that is coming before you is 237 boat slips. Residential units currently approved is 651 residential units. The proposal is 350 residential units in residential mixed-use buildings. The current hotel is 256 hotel rooms. The proposal is for 256 keys or hotel rooms plus an additional 60 hotel residences within that building. The commercial square footage is about a little over 151,000 square feet currently approved, and the proposal is to bring that down to 73,800 square feet. Current open park space area on the site park area rather, is 4.7 acres, and the proposal is to increase that to 6.14 acres. Now, the total amount of open space increases to over 7 acres. In addition, where there's 13 new buildings approved for the current project, the proposal is to bring that down and significantly bring the number of residential units down the towers down specifically. So at the conclusion of the July meeting, again, you all asked that we begin to talk and reinvigorate our discussions with the boat show. And as a result of that, in meetings that you all had, our consultants got together with the boat show's consultants, our consultants being, when I say our, Bahia Mar's consultants being EDSA. The boat show employed the use of Paul Weinberger and Keith, and they began to have direct conversations with also principals of the boat show. The result of that is some other changes to the site plan, which we'll show you, that came as a result and the fruition of those meetings. So that's where we are today, and I'll kind of walk you through that and show you how that has affected where we are. So this first slide is the currently approved project, as we just described, with those numbers that we talked about. And then consistent with what you all saw and at the direction of the commission and through the discussions, the buildings first on the North Pier, the towers that were there, were removed from that project. The second item that happened is to the west of the property. The 4 buildings that were located, 2 towers and the other supporting buildings that were at the far western edge of the building have been completely removed by the plan. The new project, therefore, creates much wider open areas, including a significantly larger central park that essentially is on the west side of the property. It maintains the 20-foot boardwalk that surrounds all the property and connects all the uses consistently. And very importantly, on the northern pier, gets rid of those 2 buildings. The result is a significant increase in open space and park space. And what you see here in the graphic, the areas that are in dark green are actual park space that, of course, the public can use. And the areas that are in lighter green are open space areas where the public can circulate around the site. It includes some parking areas, it includes driveways, it of course includes the promenade, as well as the area at the north finger, which is on the right side of this area, which has been modified. And among the things that have been modified here, as I went back and looked at the July presentation, one of the items that the district commissioner felt was very important is that the boat show be able to maintain its existence with its central entrance and its tents in that location. So as a result of that, we moved the restaurant, which was currently kind of, I can't point to this, but if you look at that right finger and you see where it says restaurant at the far right side, it was farther to the left, closer to the other hotel uses and residential uses. But admittedly, it would have blocked a potential entrance for the boat show into the overall area, so that restaurant has been moved to the north. In addition, there were concerns from the boat show related to the hotel building and its proximity to the northern property line. That's one step further in, and so that building has been pushed back to create for more open space for tent space for the boat show. So here you see a potential boat show layout. Which again is a significant improvement from the boat show's perspective. We're sure I'll have them speak to that if they wish to, but significantly better than what has already previously been approved on the project. It does some of the other things that the commission had talked about as far as taking boat show activity out of an enclosed garage, allowing that to all exist within their tents, and as a result, again, we think it's a much more free-flowing facility. It congregates the spaces together where previously they were divided up. And yet at the same time, going back to this graphic, which shows the different open space areas, you also have the additional amenities, which are shown here in a lighter violet color, of retail, restaurants, other areas that the public will engage when the boat show is not there, of course, to circulate around the site, to use those restaurants as a reason for the public generally to come to this site. I'll give you some views of the project. This is a view from the northwest, looking back to the southeast. And in this view, you now see, it's hard to see, I know at the scale, but you see the restaurant has been moved to that northern piece. You still see the large open area, which is the park that is on the west side of the property, and how all the buildings have been placed further to the east.
So those buildings to the left are already there. There's a hotel, the Aaron Hotel.
That's correct. That is a little bit out of scale. That hotel is actually taller than the building to its right, but that's correct. Those are existing buildings.
Is that the Illini?
That's the Illini, that's
Okay,
correct.
so we're talking about the space in between there as being part of the Bahia Mar site.
That's correct. And Mayor, this is a view of that site. So previously, what you saw along there was just a straight row of buildings, and that actually goes all the way back to the Blackstone proposal. Had 5-story buildings along that northern finger as it stuck up there. That has all been removed. So as you ride a bike, as you walk, as you drive along Seabreeze, you're now looking directly into the marina, as you do today when you're looking across that. Of course, the landscaping is going to be improved. There'll now be a restaurant at the northern side, but that experience will be significantly enhanced. And the view that folks are used to seeing across the marina to the beach will still remain. This is a view of an interior of the site, looking down essentially the main street, which again will be essentially a pathway for any member of the public who wishes to use the site, the roadway, the sidewalks, the landscaping on either side. You also see the promenade, which is inbound of that, and again, that's 20 feet wide, which is wide as 2 lanes in Flagler Village. The next view is of the central entrance as you come into the site. Again, obviously part of a resort environment, which will be the branding for the entire property. This is a view of looking down one of the side streets on the north and south of the side along the promenade, where you see the buildings themselves have been raised significantly high, so you have all that open space underneath. During the show, the 5 days a year that the show is there, that'll be used for tent space. The remainder of the year, it's space that the public can also enjoy. And then this is a view of the park, which is located again on the west side of the property. This is just a piece of it as you're looking at an angle, but you get an idea of how that will be experienced. And then the Marina Village, which is the other portion of the other finger on the side, so on the south side of the property, where you will have different gazebos, different restaurant and retail opportunities that the public will enjoy. That has currently been permitted, and your tenant is going to begin construction as soon as possible on it. So again, this is the overall site plan that has been revised to move the restaurant to the north side to provide the boat show with their entrance, as well as it has moved the hotel building a little bit further to the south, about 10 feet to the south, to ensure that the tents that the boat show have during their show can operate under that space and can operate successfully. Some of the advantages of an extended ground lease with this proposal, of course, is the waterfront pedestrian and bike-friendly promenade that we've discussed, the new luxury branded resort hotel, multiple parks, the new restaurants, the commercial and office spaces for the marine industry, as well as 7.3 acres of open contiguous show space, allowing for 154,000 square feet of climate-controlled exhibit space, 47,000 square feet of open-air tents, the main entrance, a better guest experience, and easier to set up and take down. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to John, who will talk about the second portion of the issues that you asked us to discuss with you today, which is the financial aspects of the project and the benefits to the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you, Mayor. John Millage, co-counsel, Bahia Mar. I want to address how this project is not only a win-win for the city in terms of not only the planning and site plan issues, but also the financial and economic aspects, benefits to the city. And these are over and above the public amenities and accommodations to the boat show that Robert mentioned, which obviously have a financial cost to the project. This slide is discussing all of the different revenue streams that will exist under the current, the proposed lease. You will still have annual rents. They will increase substantially. There'll be a large one-time payment as a result of first-time sales of the units, and I'll get into that. You'll also have, for the first time, annual transfer fees on a yearly basis that you will have in addition to rent as annual revenues, and then property taxes will rise substantially, and I'll get into the details. So just talking about currently where you stand, 2021 annual rent payments to the city between the hotel and the marina is $1.775 to the city on an annual basis currently. So under the proposed lease, annual rents will climb to $3,700,000, plus you will have $455,000 estimated on the transfer fee, and those transfer fees will be on an annual basis. So you will have annual revenues beginning at $4.1 million a year as opposed to $1.7. That's 2.5 times those annual revenues that you have currently.
Can I just ask a question?
Mhm.
When you say annual transfer fees, you're talking about the 0.25% on resales?
That's correct.
Okay.
Annual property taxes, this just summarized, we estimate that and build out the monies to the city, not the tax bill, but the dollars to the city will be $5.8 million, and I'll get into more details on that. So there's initial participation fee to the city. There'll be a transfer fee, a larger percentage than the annual transfer fee, and that'll be a one-time fee, and at build out to the city, that will be a payment to the city, one-time payment, $35,770,000.
So just so that we understand, we're using the same vocabulary. This is a percent that the city gets on the sale of each property.
That's correct.
And you're estimating that should there be a cumulative total of sales where you sell 100%, over that period of time, the city will get $35,770,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
They'll also be funded.
Sorry, Mayor, over what period of time?
Well, however long it takes them to sell out all the units. It could be all in the first year, it could be 5 years, or whatever. I don't know if they're going to build. Are you going to build all at once? No, you're not going to build all at once, are you? It would be a phased-in building program, wouldn't it?
Kenny Tate will address it.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to give a little detail.
You introduce
Oh,
yourself.
I'm Kenny Tate. I'm one of the members of the developing team. The offer to the city is a 2% of every initial sale of the branded luxury residences on the property, plus a 0.5 point of every future sale of those units in the future. The 2% goes to the city, and then we have a small additional, I think it's 0.25% on top of that, which goes to this community trust fund, which John can get into the details of that. And that's where this 39 million comes from. Again, these are the initial sales. This is based upon a valuation of $1,500 per square foot, which is currently way below what units of this quality are selling for now. It's an offer. The offer to the city is 2% of the first $1,200 per square foot, and then an increase above the 2% for anything over $1,200 a square foot. So the more success we have in the valuation of these units, the city participates in that success with us. And then on the transfer fee, the numbers that John is going to go over is the half of 1%. 3/4 of that goes to the city, and 1/4 of that goes to the future funding of these trust funds. And the trust funds are to serve community needs. And that the calculation for that is we assumed an annual transfer rate of 7.5% of the units each year. From what we understand, that's low, but we wanted to be super conservative. So in other words, if there's 100 units, if 7.5 of them sell each year, that's all we're counting on. So if
Right.
it's more than that,
But but you're not building all buildings at once.
there's only 350 units on this entire plan.
Right.
And we really envision, we will probably build there's 4 buildings, we probably do 2 at a time, because there's like 80 or 90 units in each building. And so it's probably over a 3 to 4 year period. Again, market conditions will prevail.
Right.
But assuming the demand continues where it currently is, we really think this could be developed in a 3 to 5 year period.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
So, Mayor, just getting into the details of the trust fund, the intent of that fund would be administered by either the Community Foundation or the United Way. The idea would be those dollars would be non-CapEx dollars. The idea would be there would be more operational in nature. In the affordable housing context, it could be rent subsidies, it could be utility payment subsidies.
Well, would the city be able to define the mission statement?
I think the idea would be there's 6 broad categories, and as far as the details, the city would be considered the donor, and you would make the recommendations to the Community Foundation in the United Way as to where the money should go.
So a donor advised fund?
Yes,
All right. And who else would be a donor?
I think just the city.
So who would comprise the committee?
You would set up your advisory committee. That'd be your sole discretion how to set it up.
Right, but that would be the city's vote.
That's correct.
Who else would be on this committee?
I don't think anyone else. It's you. You
Just
decide.
us.
Just
Just
you.
us. Okay.
It's you. You control it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So again, just to recap, getting back to the property taxes, the tax bill is currently 1.9 million plus or minus, and you receive 420,000 from that bill. Under build out, you're looking at 5.8 million a year in tax revenues. So again, summarize the initial residential participation, 35,000,007, annual rent 3.7, transfer fees, you're looking at 455, and so that's about 4.1 as opposed to 1.7 today, and the property taxes. So you see what your annual revenues are on a moving forward basis once the property's up and going.
Can you go back for a second? The annual transfer fee,
Yes,
that's on resales.
that's correct.
But you're not going to have do you anticipate people flipping property right after they bought it?
I mean, we're estimating 5 to 7% on an annual basis, their sales in the building.
Okay, so if the participation fee, as you call it, is $35,770,000, you're saying that in addition to that, we could anticipate $455,000 worth of resales even in the first year?
Yeah, these numbers are based upon stabilization of development. So the $35 million would be during the 3 to 5 years that
Right,
I
I get
mentioned
that.
earlier.
Right.
And upon completion, we estimate about, as I said, we use an estimate of 7.5%, and talking with some banks and mortgage brokers, they thought that was low, but we want, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be conservative. So the $10 million would be upon stabilization. So it might be 5 years before it reaches that level.
Right, but the annual transfer fee, just that one component, that's really, we don't know what that's going to be because people could hold on to their apartments.
Well, you're going to have some people that'll hold on for 30 years. You'll have other people that'll sell in 1 year.
Right.
So we have to take an average,
So that's what your average is.
and we're averaging 7.5% turnover per year, which
Okay.
again, in talking to experts, our economic advisors and banks and mortgage companies, they all thought that that was a very conservative
Conservative.
approach.
Okay, all right.
Mayor, can I ask one other
Well,
question?
you're going to build such a beautiful project that no one's going to want to sell. They'll be banging down your door trying to buy in. I think the commissioner would probably move from the Sapphire.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
sorry, could I just ask one other question about
Go ahead. Go ahead.
the resident? Can you, the hotel residences, how are those, do you, I don't know that concept really well. Do you buy into a hotel residence?
Basically, there are supersized hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Some people don't want a full residence. They just want a hotel residence, and they want to be immediately in the hotel building versus in a building next door. All the residents would have the rights to the share in the amenities, but in a hotel residence, the unit owner would be able to specify or determine when they want to use that space, and when they don't, they give it back to the hotel to put it in the hotel rental pool like any other hotel
Okay.
room.
So you just like any other property, you buy it. You buy it.
Yes,
Right,
you
okay.
would buy it, but it's
fee
with the
simple.
intention that it's probably going to be
You're
in
gonna
a hotel pool
Rent it out. Okay.
75-80% of the time. if
Got it.
not.
So it would be
So
fee simple
would that be
ownership.
fee
Fee
simple?
simple
Yeah.
ownership.
Okay.
Yes, and that's common with other hotel units,
Okay.
on the beach now.
Thanks. So would those then be include? That would be part of the 2% of every sale.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it'd be, if my math's right, then it's 410 units that would be. We get 2%.
That's correct.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to clarify some of these numbers.
So just to recap on the community trust fund, we mentioned the $4 million account. There will be a small transfer fee annual that will, the idea would be to repopulate the account on an estimate of $150,000 a year so that there's new money that goes into that account. Again, as city as the donor. So one final thing I'd like to say relates to an economic impact study that was done from the Washington Economics Group, and I just want to give you the highlighted points on that, just economic impact. So the total economic impact of all construction phases to the city of Fort Lauderdale is $980 million. To Broward County as a whole, it'll be $1.4 billion. As far as employment jobs to the city of Fort Lauderdale, direct jobs, 5,961 jobs. Indirect would be 419. Total jobs would be 6,380. To Broward County as a whole would be 9,177 jobs relating to the construction. So following build out, as far as permanent jobs of this project, there will be, for Fort Lauderdale, 1,614 direct jobs, 93 indirect, total jobs 1,707. For Broward County as a whole, 2,317. The majority of those are classified as knowledge-based services sector, which have a pay that's higher than the county average. So in summary, this project is a win-win both from site planning perspective, as well as the economic impacts. And so we would ask you to move this forward to an agenda of the City Commission so there can be final consideration of the lease. Thank you.
I'd like to clarify two things. One on John's presentation on the property taxes. Just to clarify, that's not total property taxes. That's only 20%, which is the city's share of the total property taxes. More or less. I don't know the exact number, but I've been told it's approximately 20%. So that's only your share. And on the community trust funds, the concept we've come up with, and in talking with the mayor and the district commissioner, is, where are some of the needs in the communities? We came up with 4 or 5 basic needs, and either the United Way or the Community Foundation would hold these funds, and it'd be a donor-advised fund, and the city commission would appoint a board that would make the recommendations to the Community Foundation or the United Way on how to disperse these funds. And one of the thoughts that we had is these would not be CapEx and capital, available for CapEx or capital, but they'd be available for operations. As an example, inner city parks is one of the items. We'd want the money to be used for uniforms or for balls and equipment, but not to rebuild a field. If it's for a homeless, as John mentioned, the homeless situation, we don't want to build the house, but if a resident needed help paying rent or paying for utilities, we want these to be operational. The city and the other governments, they have the obligation to take care of the CapEx and the capital requirements. We want to be able to support, once these programs are established, to support the community's efforts to better utilize these services. Sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Locker, you have any further comments?
Not at this time.
You want to conclude?
Certainly.
Or did Mr. Millage conclude?
Well, I'll do a quick job. So that's really where we are. Again, we appreciate all the help that the city has been offering us and all the discussions as we've gone through this process, particularly since July, when we think we've made a lot of additional progress and been able to tie down a lot of numbers. Happy to answer any questions you may have, and again, just looking for direction moving forward.
Okay.
We enter maybe what's phase 3. I don't know.
Okay, so thank you. So I want to report to the commission and Commissioner Glassman, I hope you would as well. So I met with the applicant, with the developers on multiple occasions to discuss back and forth this proposal. I also met with Informa, the folks who own the boat show. And they came to this compromise site plan that they feel that they could live with, considering the expectations of the developer as well as the needs of the boat show in order to effectively and successfully put on a boat show year in and year out for the balance of their 30-year lease. So with that being said, we're now at this point because now the big concern that I had, and I think the rest of this commission had, was making sure that there was a home for the boat show, that they were not going to be completely displaced, which the current site plan I felt would just basically take them off the peninsula. So that's good news. And they did this by reducing the amount of residential units, and they did this by reducing the amount of the commercial space. And this is important because we needed to contract the development in order to be able to accommodate all the uses that this community expected from that site. We got to the point then of the financial aspect of it. And John Herbst, our city auditor, helped work with us along with our real estate consultant. And we've come up with some proposals that we feel are appropriate for what the financial return should be on this. And John, could I impose upon you right now to present to the public what our conversations consisted of?
Thank you, Mayor. So in our conversations, there are obviously 2 different approaches to how we can be compensated for the value of our land. We have the proposal that's before us from the Tate brothers, and that includes a base rent as well as participation in the development and ongoing operation of the property. The alternative to that would be one where we are simply acting as a landlord and we are receiving a flat rent based on the value of the parcel and doesn't include necessarily some of these other participating revenue streams down the road. And so we worked with Colliers, and they developed an appraised value of the property of roughly $180 million. And if we're looking at an appropriate cap rate for that in today's environment, it would be somewhere in the 6 to 7%. So based simply on that, you'd be looking at a rental of, in the $10 to $12 million range. Again, in very round numbers. There are some challenges when we look at that approach because that assumes we've got a clean scrape site that would be available for development and unencumbered.
Based on existing zoning.
Based on existing zoning, right. This is no change to zoning, but it assumes we have, free access to the site, and obviously we are currently encumbered by the existing lease. So there's some argument about that. You could look at the second way that they do their valuation is based on the net present value of future cash flows under the existing lease, which looks at the rental revenue which we get right now, which is if nothing were to happen with the site, no further development, our current rental rate is $1.7 million. If you extend that out for the life of the lease and then discount it back at an appropriate interest rate, obviously the value of the leasehold in that respect is substantially lower. So the real value is somewhere probably between those two, because the site's not going to stay in its existing condition. It will be redeveloped into something. The question is it redeveloped to its highest and best use? Is it redeveloped along the lines with the current site plan? So therein lies some of the challenges with trying to come up with an equitable value for the land. But again, using the top line number of roughly $182 million that they've come up with for the site and their cap rate, again, we'd be looking at a rental value of somewhere in the $10 to $12 million range.
John, what does it do then if it is encumbered, which it is? What does that do to the appraisal?
Well, again, if it's encumbered and nothing happens, then we're looking at a substantially lower number in the $30 to $40 million range. If it's developed, if you were to look at it with the as-is site plan that we have in place, which is based on I believe it's 7 rental buildings, that value is probably more, and I'm speculating here at this point because that's not part of their number, but I would say we'd come in somewhere in the middle because rental properties have a lower assessed value than condos have. So if we were to look at this as a fully developed site with rental units on it, it would be somewhat different than it would be as a plain scrape redevelopment site, where you could go with something along the lines of what the developer is proposing now, which ultimately could be $1 billion project.
So when you say somewhere in the middle, you mean somewhere in the middle between that 30, 40 million and that 182 million?
That's correct.
Okay.
But again, please let me caveat that I'm not an expert in real estate appraisal. So.
And neither am I. Thank you.
Commissioner Glassman, do you want to add to this discussion through any conversations that you had?
Are you done with your, okay, thank you, Mayor. Well, I wanted just basically to echo a lot of what you said, and I wanted to thank all of the parties. I too met numerous times with the tenant, and we had several meetings together with the tenant and Boat Show, and I want to thank everyone from Informa, Marine Industries, Boat Show, and all of the input, and obviously a lot of community input as well. So I wanted to, just thank the parties because I felt that we did come a long way in the meetings, and then the meetings that the Boat Show had individually with Keith and also EDSA and the tenant, we made some good changes to make sure that we were protecting the Boat Show. What I want to hear a little bit more, because it was one of my concerns when I had a concern about the condominiums, I think I've heard what I need to hear, but I want to hear also from our city attorney. Because what I was always concerned about with the condominiums was the fact that my fear was that when the associations would turn over from the developer to the association, then they could change documents, as I've seen in condominiums before, and that would be posing a threat to the Boat Show. But again, my concern at that time in March was because what was coming to us at that time were condominium associations that we're sort of familiar with, independent, standalone condominium associations. At that time, we were even reading about air rights because the individual condominium associations were then even split up so that the commercial in the building had their own association. Now I'm understanding that that's all off the table. We're not thinking about air rights. We're not thinking about those multiple associations. And even the condominium associations themselves will be different because they will be managed by the resort. So to me, that's a positive step because it's not the condominium association that I first thought. Actually, it was the first presentation to us in March in terms of the structure of those condominiums. But I want to make sure, and I want to hear from Alan, because what I've been reading and what I've been listening to in meetings is that there are ways to protect the boat show from that type of document amendment from the associations once they go through turnover from the developer. So I want to hear that from our own city attorney and making sure that the language is there for us, the structure is there for us to make sure that in the master lease, in the declarations, in all of the subleases, and all of the agreements that are going to be done, that language is strong enough and we feel confident that those documents cannot be altered. Even going as far as to say that any of the purchasers of these properties will have to sign off on that kind of acknowledgement in terms of the boat show. So that is my one question that I want to hear from Alan with regards to that. But other than that, I did, again, just want to thank everybody. I think the meetings were very productive. My goal when this started out was to scrap the 2017 site plan, which I was never in favor of. Robert had actually mentioned some of the comments that you and I, Mayor, had before we sat here in this office. Because I always had concerns about the 2017 site plan and even iterations before that. I'm thrilled that now people will be able to enjoy the vistas from the ocean to the intracoastal because we've eliminated those large buildings on that north finger. So that to me is also a big plus. I don't want to repeat everything, but we've eliminated major buildings on this site. We've opened up major acreage for open space. The world that the boat show will inhabit on this peninsula now is night and day from what we're looking at right now in the approved plan in terms of how they're going to be operating on this site, as opposed to in a garage with really no open space, no land to really maneuver, to set up, to exhibit, and then even to break down. So I'm really pleased with the changes, and again, we've seen all of those changes from the 2017 site plan. I think this makes a world of a difference. I think we're headed in the right direction, but I do want to hear from Alan about that specificity with regards to protection of the boat shows with the condos on that site.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you recall back after July, we had requested for a master declaration to be provided to us because that really is a document that governs sort of the relationship between all the various parties on the property. There is, as currently drafted, very strong language in the master declaration protecting the boat show. Everyone where a residence is sold, it's taken subject to the boat show being there. They waive any rights to any legal objection or otherwise to the boat show being there. There's a variety of sections that deal with it, one specifically and some others indifferently, but the master declaration is really hardwired to protect the boat show. So as currently drafted, it's very well protected.
So, and that language will be in every document that's produced.
And then there'll be on full note, well, again, based on what we've reviewed, anyone buying a property will be on full notice of not only the boat show, their right to be there, the superiority of the boat show, and their inferior interest or the property owner's inferior interest to the boat show. They'll be on notice. They waive their rights to challenge that, and it's made very clear in the document.
Okay, thank you. Now, that's reassuring to me. Mayor, when I review old leases and charter language with regards to Bahia Mar and the purpose of what Bahia Mar was supposed to be for the city, I think that we're on the right track. Language in those original documents speak to driving this home economically as much as possible, that this needed to be a high economic impact for the city. And I think we've headed in that direction. Obviously, the 10 million roughly that we're talking about now that was presented by John is significantly higher than the 1.7. I think we can get into a discussion with regards to, I meant John Millage before, but with John Herbst's language, I think we can get into that discussion of the best way to look at that financially. We know what those numbers are with the appraisals. We know that it's encumbered, so that obviously factors in with also what Collier said. But I'm almost thinking that, I could see the argument in the years coming that let's look 20 years out in the future and people might say to us, we can't believe you wanted that flat number when you didn't realize how high condominiums would go and the appraisals would go and the value would go. Why didn't you go with, the formula that would probably have gained you a lot more of a rental? So I'm leaning in that direction because I think that the site would have the potential to garner even above that $10 million a year. Either case, it's still right around that $10 million a year, which is quite a different number than the 1.7 roughly that we're seeing now in city revenue.
Wait a minute, but you say in either case we're at that 10 million. Not really, because they include taxes to get to their 10 million, and we don't. And I mean, not we, but John Herbst does not include taxes because we get taxes either way. So we actually have two hats. We have hats as landlord, and we have hats as government agency. And so, as landlord, we should look to see what's our rate of return on the real estate we own. And taxes are a separate issue. So, I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. No, and I understand. Either way, I think that we're very close. Either way, the number is going to pan out. I think, very, very, very similarly. I know also that there is some heartburn out there about condominiums on this site, and I understand that fully. But I also look at the site holistically, and I look at what the mission is on the site, and I do believe that what we're looking at now in terms of public land for public purpose is achieved because of the site and what it's going to offer to the public. I think when all is said and done and this site is fully developed, I think the public will have a peninsula there that they've never actually had before to use and enjoy, to stroll, to walk, to sit, to look at the boats, to eat at restaurants, grab a cup of coffee, and to really enjoy. And I never was in favor of the site plan that's approved now, as I mentioned earlier, with 651 units. So whether you look at it at 350 or 410, again, to me, I look at it at 350 because those 60 units in the hotel itself, you cannot get homestead on those units. You can get homestead if you were, but I personally believe that we won't even see much homestead on that site. These, to me, the caliber of these units and the site and the resort, I think this is going to be a second, third, and maybe even fourth home for people. That's why I'm actually not even that concerned with some of the traffic issues for these residences, because I think that it's really not going to make much of a difference. I remember when the Auberge was coming forward on the northern end of the beach, and people were also very concerned, and rightfully so, about things like traffic and infrastructure. But I live a block from there, and I'll tell you right now, I see no traffic at all ever. I think that those are also second, third, and fourth homes for folks. I see no stress on the infrastructure there. It's as quiet as can be, just as quiet as it always was, even before that project was built. Again, because this is not the type of housing where these are permanent residences of the folks. So, all in all, I could go on. I understand a lot of the frustration that's out there with this, but at the end of the day, we have to make a decision to move forward with something that's going to protect that land for us. I'm not in favor of selling off any portion of this land. And I think that we have to move forward in a way that's prudent, not just for the immediate area, but for the entire city, because this will be a location that I believe will be enjoyed by the entire city. And I see a lot of progress that we've made since last March, and so thank you for your work on that as well, Mayor. And again, thank you to everyone for all of your participation. I think that we've made some solid progress. Thanks.
Okay. I could ask the rest of the commission if they want to comment now or wait until we have a number of people sign up to speak. Does anyone on the commission want to speak now, or do you want to wait?
I would like to, Mayor, and
Yes,
I'd like
please
to
go
hear
ahead,
from
Marcia.
the,
Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me, or do you want to call on somebody else?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Thank you for what you just shared with us, Dean and Steve. I appreciate that. I just have a couple thoughts as we're going through this. And so just hear me out for a minute. So we have made a lot of concessions. We have made a lot of requests, including, increasing the number of hotel units, increasing the amount of public space and amenities, making sure the boat show is protected, whether it's the space they are being provided or making sure the master declaration protects the boat show from continuing to operate or protecting them from the condos, I guess. Making sure this is a world-class marina, which I know the charter also said, reducing the amount of commercial space, reducing the amount of buildings. I have in my notes, I'm just looking at, there were 13 buildings on the 2017 plan. What was the final number on the proposed plan that we're looking at now for the number of buildings?
Number of buildings. Mr. Locker.
It was 13, and then I know it has gone down based on the conversations you all have had.
Well, according to your presentation, you eliminated 6 buildings?
Yes, essentially, we're down to 13 buildings. Now, some of those buildings are much smaller than what was previously approved,
Right.
but that's correct.
Okay, so the proposed 2021 plan will have 13 buildings, even though we eliminated some, maybe
I don't count 13 buildings.
I don't think there are 13.
No.
But I'm just,
Oh, no. So originally there were 13.
Right.
correct.
The current proposal is 8.
8.
8, okay, thank you. I'm just trying to fill in my notes. I find it, the restaurants, moving those over to the north a little bit, that makes sense. Once again, for the boat show, I do think it's important that we renegotiate a better lease than what we currently have, and it looks like we are doing that. I do probably agree with Steve on this one. The base rent with the percentage split of the revenue, that makes a little bit more sense to me. When I also look at the financials and I look at what the city would gain, I look at other projects that we currently have where we have projects on city land. And I'm thinking even a recent project that we had when we looked at the east and the west side of the aquatic center. Is that public information yet? Am I allowed to talk about that? I forget what's public and what's not. Alan, city attorney?
Which project are you referring to?
Just the
Swimming Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Swimming Hall of Fame, the East and West. Yeah, we just voted on that, but we can talk about the financials and the possibility. I just want to make sure I can discuss that.
You can. There's also
I forget what's cut.
also the potential on the one-stop shop. There's a proposal by them to pay a certain amount of rent also, which we can also discuss because that's public information. So I think they proposed $1 million for 2 acres.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that up. I'm just thinking of other examples, though, and they're not all the same, obviously, and I guess it's our decision to decide what we want to accept. But even the Swimming Hall of Fame property, the city is contributing to that. We are not getting any revenue, really, from the east and west portions of those buildings. So I am comfortable with the financials we saw with the base rent and the split. So especially when I think of what we're considering right next door to that. Once again, the revenue to the city increasing, currently 1.7 million and going up to approximately 10 million, maybe after everything's built and we see all that revenue. I'd also like us to consider as a commission, this doesn't really have to do with this conversation, but I'd like to consider, Chris, don't we have something, I know we voted on it, where if we sell city land, we actually put the money in kind of like a city affordable housing trust fund? What am I thinking of?
When we sell just regular land in the city, the proceeds go to the general fund.
Didn't we come up with something where we said we wanted either a portion or some of the proceeds to go into an affordable housing trust fund? I know we had this
There is a
conversation.
formula that exists on the sale of certain properties that would pay into an affordable fund. I'd have to pull that policy to define it specifically, but typically, like tonight, for example, there's a disposal of a property on the agenda. Those funds, when received, would end up going into the general fund.
Okay, so well, I'm just thinking when I hear about all these possibilities and additional revenue coming into the city, I'm thinking I like the donor advised fund with the community trust foundation and their fund. I would like to see a certain percentage of what we will gain from this go into some of our own whether it's a affordable housing fund or we put it back to the donor advised fund and we designate some of it. I think this is great. And I do think, the properties and the luxurious units will be a benefit to our guests and neighbors or visitors coming to Fort Lauderdale. But I also want to think about also affordable housing if we can. And it won't be tied to this, obviously, but it just crossed my mind when I was listening. So I'd like us to do more as a city to invest in affordable housing, especially when we have all these opportunities where we're building such beautiful projects. So all these things we are gaining. And also when I think about the beach, everywhere from the new parking garage to Pier 66, I mean, we are really rebuilding a beautiful peninsula, like you said, Steve. And this is kind of one of the last pieces that we need to make a decision on and move forward. And I believe everything that you've discussed and all the changes you've made, I feel like this is it. I feel ready to really move forward. And with what I've heard today, I do know that we will have to do something different, which a lot of neighbors aren't necessarily supporting. And that's to allow condos on this piece of public property. But when we're asking for all these public amenities, we have to pay for them somehow. And so I believe that putting the condos will give us the revenue and the income that we need to get all the public amenities we're asking for. I mean, you have to pay for things somehow. And I think this is just the model that they are coming up with to help provide the amenities that we are requiring as a city. And I'm willing to make that concession. And my last point that I wanted to bring up is opportunities for public input. I know we're going to have a little bit today, but this meeting will be over soon. When will the public have more of an opportunity to weigh in on this, Chris? I know this isn't a vote today. It's just kind of getting some direction for how we want to move forward.
I think we'll have to dispute that. We'll have to schedule another public hearing workshop to continue the public participation. So,
Okay, and will that be 2 hearings? It'll be a public hearing, like first and second reading, basically? So they'll have at least those 2 opportunities?
It's not going to be necessarily first and second. Your leases, the master lease, the phase leases, all the various documentation will have to be approved by the city commission, obviously. So there'll be an opportunity at that time as well for the public to comment. Obviously, that'll be.
But you're talking at an actual either conference or regular meeting, right? Not a
Correct.
workshop.
Right.
And Mayor, while we're on that, I would like to hear from the city attorney what he needs or what the next steps are. Or
we're not there yet.
Okay, we're not there yet.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah, well, put your mic on.
I thought it was on.
Okay.
It goes back to what the vice mayor is saying. This is a workshop. We're going to have public comments there?
I think it's time that we allow people to kind of just hear what they have to say.
I think
So-
each time we brought this up, and no disrespect to the chair, we've weighed in, had public input. There's no disrespect to the public either. I thought this is our opportunity
It is.
to give direction. That's where we want to go, get a feel for what you and Commissioner Glassman have been discussing with the tenants and the boat show people. And we can come back with a document that the public can actually see that is a real working document and give real input on. Today, we're just giving direction. So why would input on our direction today need or warrant public input?
Well, are there comments you'd like to make now with regard to what's been presented so far?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I want to hear what we're talking about, and because
But since there'll be
the public can't give me facts.
Well, but the public can weigh in on things, and I don't want to deny the public.
But typically in a workshop, we don't do that typically.
Okay, well, I'm going to do it. So.
Oh, that's different.
Forward.
But Mayor, I just want to be clear now, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, we typically haven't done that in a commission workshop. But I want to make sure going forward now, we will always do that in a commission workshop because I want us to be consistent.
There's time.
No.
No. We got
to do it
be
or not do it.
consistent.
Not do it.
I just want to make sure that the public will always have a chance to.
We're not
weigh in.
arguing, Mayor.
No,
Why are we changing the rules?
It's process, and I want to make sure that at a commission workshop, not an agenda item, which this is, not on a conference meeting, not on a regular meeting. If we do this now, I want to make sure that we do that at every commission workshop because we have to be fair. It has to be consistent. We can't just say, okay, for this commission workshop, we're going to have public input, but we might not in the future. That just doesn't work for me.
Objection to that.
And
Okay.
and
Taking up
as
time
much
by
as
talking about it,
as much as I don't want to agree with you, Steve,
people speak.
we have to be consistent. We're not consistent. Is what we're saying. Now all of a sudden we're going to pull a rabbit out of the hat for Bahia
Why
Mar.
are we arguing over this?
No, we're not arguing.
Not arguing.
Mayor, we are allowed
We're
to
discussing.
give our input. We're having a discussion.
So going
You're the one
forward-
that's
and going
arguing.
forward-
But you just usurp your authority because you do get to run meetings. That's the one thing you have over us. You run the meetings. So if you want to do it, you do it.
Okay, good. Going
So I would say one thing, Mayor, to weigh in on this conversation.
So going forward, we'll make it a policy.
Every workshop.
We'll allow public input at workshop meetings.
Perfect.
Really simple.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, Vice.
Can I say
what do you want to say?
my one thing? So I think if I was the public, and it would be helpful for the public, if we're going to also allow the public input, to have a little bit more on the backup so they have an understanding of what we're discussing. Because I kind of was really focusing my own thoughts when I was trying to prepare for this, like what Steve said in the beginning. What are we hoping to get out of this meeting? What does the city attorney, what does the city manager, need from me to move this forward or to stop it altogether? So I wasn't thinking we were talking about a specific site plan or a specific, lease or anything. I didn't kind of hone in on that. I've kind of paid attention a little bit more to the financials. So maybe just so we are all on the same page, the public and the commission, kind of understanding what we're discussing or what we're trying to move forward. So once again, I think Chris and Alan, did I give you enough input from my perspective to move to? Do you have the direction you need from me for the next steps?
Speaking for myself, I'd like to be able to bring documents back to you for your consideration. Right now, we're in a bit of a holding pattern without some decisions and guidance with regards to what sort of business model we're going forward. Certainly legally, there are certain things that we can look at and agree upon without knowing exactly what the business model is going to be. But for us to really be able to bring something to you substantively to look at in physical form, both from a master lease standpoint, phased lease concept, and the master declaration, we need to sort of have an indication of which direction we're going. Are we going towards the revenue sharing? Are we going towards the rental? That would help us to sort of finalize.
Okay. And then that's what I thought we were trying to get out of this too. And so maybe before we get to the public input, I just want to make sure you have what you need from me. I do support the base rent with the split revenue. And that's just my vote from everything I've researched and gone over.
You support the base rent?
I support the base rent with the split revenue model, not just the base rent.
Okay.
And Mayor, can we just make sure we do leave a few moments at the end, whenever that is, so that the city attorney and city manager are clear on what is our consensus and where we are going from here? I just don't want the workshop to end and we just look at each other and go, well, what was that all about?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that city staff has the direction to move to whatever that next step is, that's all.
Okay, so I think one of the issues that.
So hold on a second.
Yeah.
He just asked you a question and you went right into something else. So
No,
are
I'm
we gonna have
a
an?
question.
Oh, you are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So please let me talk and stop interrupting.
I am, but no, I apologize. But he was asking a question. Are we going to have an outcome to do something at the end? That's all. It's a yes or no question.
It's not a yes or no
Sure
question.
it is.
And look,
Sure it is.
stop interrupting me.
I'm not interrupting you. I asked a question. I asked a question.
His question.
Okay, then I'm going to ask a question when he's
Meetings
finished.
is that one person asks a question and I will try to respond.
But when you don't get the answer you want to play mayor.
I am the mayor.
Oh, I forgot about
Did you
that.
forget that?
Yeah, I forgot.
So
Just for a
so
moment.
please behave yourself, okay? Remember
sorry.
I read this at the beginning of the meeting? No
You
tomatoes.
said no hitting. You said no hitting commissioners, no hitting mayors. You didn't say we couldn't use words.
That's what these are for.
I think the word was attacking. It wasn't physically hitting. It was attacking. I was wondering if it was physical myself.
Okay.
All right,
so
Mayor.
the thing is, obviously, the big issue here, to respond to your is how are we going to determine what the rental value is because the applicant indicates that, hey, we have entitlements now. If you look at the entitlements, you look at what the entitlements do to encumber the property, it brings the value down to X, okay? And therefore, if you base a rent on X, this is what the return would be. In discussing this with our real estate consultant as well as with John, We had these conversations as you've had conversations, and we're sharing those conversations today, in which if we had looked at the site strictly based on the current zoning entitlements, in other words, what the current zoning law permits, it comes up with a completely different value. And if you look at what the return on investment would be at 6% return just on rent, it would be close to 10.8 million if you went at 6%. So
Well, that's at what? That's at the 180 million though?
$180 million.
Okay, and that's the one end, the other end was 30, and then there was somewhere what John said was in the middle, if you look at the encumbrances, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And maybe even Colliers could weigh in on this, because I do want to hear more about that, because I think the formula is important, and the assessed value that we
Has
choose.
weighed in on this.
Yeah, but I'd like to hear them weigh in too. I mean, that's the
But
question.
John said it's somewhere in between, and I wanted to hear a little bit more clarification.
Mayor, I just want to reserve time for my own comments and questions, so I'm going to need plenty of time. So go ahead, as long as you're got that factored in. Thank you.
Oh, he can talk and I can't?
So finish what you're saying.
No, I think it is important for us to figure out, because I'm hearing anywhere from 30 million to 180 million based on a whole set of criteria, and I want to know where we really should be landing on that before we then decide what is the appropriate base amount to look at. It has to be an educated opinion. It has to be, a number that you just don't pull out.
Representative from Colliers here today.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Ken Krasnow from Colliers.
Do you have questions to ask him?
Yeah, so Ken, we've heard a range of 30 million to 180 million on an assessed value, and that's going to help us determine how we look at the revenue coming into the city. So I just want to know what your opinion is, and you know how the land is encumbered and not encumbered, and you understand the piece. What is a number that we should be looking at? If we are going to be looking at 6 or 7% of a number, what is that number that we should be looking at?
Well, I think you do have to factor in now where the new proposal and site plan is, right? So you start from sort of one extreme to the other, right? One extreme, if it was unencumbered, scrap, or do nothing. What the applicant is now proposing obviously has a value associated with that, and I think that's probably a place where you would look to start.
So, and there also is an improved site plan from 2017, and we have one now that we've sort of seen a conceptual model of. So what is, in your opinion, the number that we should be basing the 6 or 7%
I
on?
wouldn't want to just throw out a number until we look at exactly what the plan, currently looks like now. So, I mean, we could do that
So how do you,
in short order. But
so how do you feel about the number that was thrown out there, the 180 million? I mean, if you're saying there's no real number right now, then how do you feel about the $180 million that's on the table now?
the 180 was based on the fact that if you had a piece of land on the beach and based on current zoning, what you could build, what the value, would be. Obviously, that's not necessarily all that relevant from a perspective of it's not a clean piece of land. It is encumbered.
Just so again, I haven't been part of all these conversations, so I'm going to be a little slow here and maybe need a lot of help probably. So you're saying the land is encumbered. What is encumbering the land?
You have a lease in place.
Who's the lease with? Or maybe should ask Alan.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot, Ken.
Ron Bahia Mar.
So let me just, again, I'm a little slow on
This was
this.
established several years ago. There's 42 years left on it. The current owners of the lease are the folks we've been dealing with, their group. And they in addition to the lease, they have entitlements that the
Yep.
previous commission voted
Right.
on and approved, which now represents the full group of encumbrances that are attached to this land.
Okay, great. So
Alan?
Yes.
So help me if I'm kind of tracking this right. So the folks that would like to extend the lease, do some new things to the property, are the same folks who have the current lease to the property. The only encumbrance is the lease that the folks who want to do new things with the property have on the current property. Is that right?
In a variety of ways, yes, but again, the duration is there's several factors there. One of it is if there's a condo component, state law requires a clean 50 years.
I get it.
So there's some legal, I'm sure there's some finance aspects there too, but yes.
So I'm trying to understand if we're valuing property and we're saying, hey, if we're saying, hey, I would like to, let's say I'm renting a piece of property in the city. I would like to extend that rental of that piece of property. And the piece of property I'm renting, the only thing it's encumbered by is my current rental agreement. So how does that really diminish the value of property if the only encumbrance is my own encumbrance?
Because the use is defined by what's allowed in your master lease. And also here you have a site plan that's been approved. So they're restricted with the current site plan they have and the current master lease they have for another, like the mayor said, another 42 years.
Sure.
But there's limitations there.
So to follow what the commissioner was saying, if you strip away the idea of the lease as an encumbrance, then are we looking at the entitlements as the encumbrance is what is bringing the value down to the $30 million? That's the question. Is the entitlements alone sufficient to bring that value down to the $30 million value? Because what the commissioner is saying is a valid point. If they're looking to extend the lease and their only encumbrance is their lease, okay, we can choose the terms we want as between landlord and tenant. That's done all the time. So did you make a separate valuation based on the?
I think that may be best on its current use as well, not necessarily best in, so.
There you go.
Right, so I believe, and maybe John can speak to that, John Herbst, the 40 million number, I think, is based on the current use and the limitations there, not necessarily potential under their new site plan, although that would be obviously a somewhat of a limitation, although I wouldn't necessarily think that devalues the property. I'm sure that's a nice project as well, but the current use and the limitations now, I think, would be but John can maybe speak to that.
Okay, so if the current lease, the leaseholder holds, that the leaseholder is seeking to redo and extend, if that is somehow encumbering the property or diminishing the appraised value, why not work with that party and terminate that encumbrance?
That's up to the parties.
Exactly, right? So we could just say, all right, great. So to not further encumber and diminish the value that we own, that the public owns to this property, let's terminate that encumbrance. And that way we as the city can get the greatest value of the property.
If everybody agrees, you can do that.
Okay.
Everybody has to
All right.
agree.
Commissioner, let me give you a different perspective on that.
Great.
Though. So if we were to buy back the leasehold interest and use it as has been proposed by many in the community as a park or something of that nature,
Yep.
the value of that land as a park is substantially different than the value of that land to a developer as a fully built-out condo.
Sure.
So we've got different values for the same asset. So I'll use an analogy. A bottle of water to somebody who's in the desert is a lot more valuable than a bottle of water to somebody who's in a lake.
Yep, absolutely. And that potential use could be open to anything. In other words, we could say, hey, let's terminate the lease. Track me if I'm off on this. Let's terminate the lease, and we'll consider all possibilities. We'll consider massive development, condo development there. We'll consider park or anything in between.
So let me throw out, there's really four values that I would look at this. There's the value of the current site with the current buildings if we do nothing. And that's based on the net present value of future cash flows, which gives us sort of that bottom line number. We have the next one where we look at the value of the site with the presently approved buildings that we can put on it. So the rental buildings with the remaining lease that's on there, no extensions of the lease. We're not giving them the 100 years or anything else. We're capping it at what the lease currently allows. That's the second value. The third value is if we own that land, it's scrape clean, and we are going to do highest and best use in the marketplace. We've got that value. And then we've got the value that the developer has in his mind based on what he is contemplating doing it with a change in use and with the buildings he's got proposed. So we really have 4 different working values for this site, depending on who controls it and what they're going to do with it.
Sure. Yeah.
You're not
Great.
helping.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Ben,
You can thank me for muddying the waters, yes.
Right.
Ben, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
You made a comment about terminating the lease.
Yeah.
Is that something we can do? Can we terminate the lease?
Well, it's going to cost you. You're going to be in breach. So
Say,
if you,
say it louder, please.
you'd be in breach if you do that.
Oh, no. My suggestion is you terminate it together with both parties. You work together and terminate it. Then it's no longer encumbered.
When you say both parties, what do you mean? The people that you
The
didn't know?
leaseor and the leasee.
But by encumbrance, it's a reduction of full value. It doesn't mean that it's worthless.
I'm not saying it's worthless.
Right, there's a good value to it now.
Absolutely.
It's just it lessens the best use because of the limitations.
That would be eliminated if the encumbrance was removed.
But you're going to have to pay for that.
It would cost us. Okay, say that again.
So to get out of the lease, you're going to have to pay for that.
That's possible.
It's possible.
Absolutely. But that's where you work.
That was offered and it was declined.
Right. But I'm just sharing that's a possibility.
No, it's not a possibility because that was already offered. We offered to buy it and they declined.
What did we offer to pay for it?
Well, there wasn't even a question. It was just they weren't interested.
They weren't interested in terminating the lease. Okay, great. Fantastic. So that's
And one other question. I know you said something about a park.
Yeah.
Does the charter allow us to do a park there?
You could designate it.
No. Does the current
Actually,
charter?
the current charter would probably not do that. I'd have to pull it, but no.
The way I read it, it doesn't allow that.
Correct. There could be a park component, but
Yep.
there still has to be the existing charter requirement for world-class, I think, marina.
A what? A world-class what?
Marina, I believe, and I got to get the language. But
Yeah, it's a whole slew.
Absolutely.
World-class.
Well, I know what it is. I'm just.
Yeah.
I don't think we can diminish it to a park based on the charter language.
no, I don't think anyone's saying that. I think you can have a world-class marina and park, right?
I just want to make sure that we're.
Yeah. Is that right, Alan? Can you have a marina and a park?
You can have a component of a park, yes.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I
my
think is here
apologies.
now. Isn't that?
The limitations, what the mayor and commissioner are referring to is what's in the existing lease. The charter deals solely with the limitations on the 50 years plus 50. So that's in the actual charter. The current lease has the limitations and the prohibitions on what actually can happen on the property. So if you do buy it out, technically you could, the city commission could make it a park.
Okay. Great. Thanks. Mayor, I've got a bunch more questions. Do you want me to do those now or
Oh, do
go
it
through this? Okay. Great. So, I'm still at the very high level of understanding why condos are the greatest solution to this public land. I'm just not there. I don't quite understand why that makes the best use of this amazing public land that historically has been so important to us. With that being said, I'm also still concerned about the boat show, and I know you all have been working with them, so I'd just like to bring them up because I want to just talk through. I know you all have been meeting with them. I haven't as much as you have been, so is that all right?
Andrew or Phil, either one of you like to come up to the podium? You can both come up.
And then while they're coming up, I'm thinking of similar properties in One Stop. What's our current proposed deal with One Stop in terms of the valuation of rent and so forth? Again, I'm not familiar with.
That's still in the process of being negotiated. I don't know that I don't think we can talk much about that proposal today.
Can I ask you a
Okay.
question though, because the vice mayor asked a question about the Swimming Hall of Fame. What are we getting in rent from the Swimming Hall of Fame on their site?
We're still negotiating that. As you recall, we entered into an interim agreement, and the comprehensive agreement will identify that, but the interim agreement was more about development and what they can do on the site prior to a comprehensive.
But they're a nonprofit, are they not?
There's a component, I believe, of that, yes.
So so I just wanted to bring that up, Vice Mayor. They're a nonprofit entity, so
There's a-
whatever rent they get charged is going to be it's going to have different considerations than a for-profit entity.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I don't believe we're getting any money. I believe we're only paying money. So that's what I'm saying. And a lot of people can be a nonprofit. I mean, isn't the developers for One Stop Shop, aren't they coming in as some kind of entity that doesn't have to pay property tax? I mean, I'm kind of surprised when I heard that Bahia was paying property tax, because every other P3 I see on our property, no one's paying property tax.
They're paying property tax.
What's the appraisal of One Stop?
I'll have to get that.
But P3 that's not. Panthers.
Panthers aren't.
What was it? I'm sorry.
Well, why don't we you've asked these gentlemen to.
I believe it was roughly 20 million.
Is it, well, these gentlemen are here now. Why don't you ask them?
28.
The boat show, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll get back to that. All right, thanks. Thanks, boat show folks. You want to introduce yourself or?
Sure. Hi, Phil Purcell with the Marine Industry Association of South Florida. Mayor, Commissioners, thanks for having us. Vice Mayor online, thank you. So we've been working on this for the last few months when we were invited to work.
Can you speak into the microphone, Phil?
Sorry. Yeah, by all means. We've been working on this for the last few months when we were invited to do so. And so our teams have been working on the logistical side of the site, okay? And so the logistical side's one thing, and I think we're close from the logistical side. But, again, I'm up here on behalf of a $9.7 billion industry for a boat show that's 62 years old, so older than most people in this room in terms of what it's committed to our industry, because it's not a 5-day show. It's a 360-day industry because of that show. That's $9.7 billion. And when you talk about economic impact and things like that, in 19 it delivered $1.3 billion economic impact. So I love the numbers. The condos can deliver long-term. The economic impact of the show in 19 was $1.3 billion, and over 715 million of direct sales at the show, so 143 million a day. This year we just completed the 2021 show, and Tom Murray and Associates updating that study, and you're going to see those numbers blowing through in terms of attendance in a positive way, in terms of economic impact, and in terms of sales, and substantially up, 20-25%. We're the largest tenant at Bahia, and you guys have a copy of our lease, so you know what we pay at the end of the day on an annual basis. The second largest tenant from a revenue thing, I would assume, is the marina. So both, again, are really tied to our industry at the end of the day and the importance of what gets developed or not developed. As you know, in our lease, aside from a public forum, we're not allowed to talk about the lease. And we would ask that if you do move this forward, that we become tenant to the city on the lease. We do not, there's some wonderful attorneys working on the developer side, and we have some wonderful attorneys too, but we don't want to put in or gone an exception to what can happen, as you know, when boards get together, and we can have a different commission up here at that point also. So we need to be tenant to the city on our lease. So that we feel comfortable that, again, when you look at the monies that the boat show pays for, as Commissioner McKenzie points out, for 5 days, and actually it's 15 days, plus we're going to require additional setup as we improve this site plan also. So we're going to have to extend what now currently is about a 15-day process, and Andrew will tell you exactly what it would need to be. Our industry lives in Oakland Park and Wilton Manors, everywhere in this town, Rio Vista, you name it. And so it's a really important component. When you look at valuations and things like that, again, I believe you guys have the right to do that. Part of the lease was bifurcated to Suntech in some capacity for a financial payment. When I hear evaluations of 30 million or 180 million, put an RFP out to our industry and you'll see who shows up, because that marina is one of the most valuable marinas anywhere, and the property is also. But again, what I would ask is, your legacy is going to be condos or our industry. I guess you can do both, and we're asking if you do both, please allow us to be a tenant directly to the city for the boat show, so that while we have a relationship with the current developer, we don't want to have to deal with an association ever again, or anyone else that could affect what we know 62 years continues to grow. And part of that whole thing we all need to make sure is, under these guidelines, that boat show can continue to grow, because it's the #1 most important boat show in the world, bar none.
Thanks, Phil. I don't think I've ever read the whole lease without, some limitations. So help me understand these numbers here. So what do you pay for rent?
I would need permission from the developers to talk about that. Kenny, can I talk? Jimmy, can I talk? Barry, can I talk about the boat show payment? I'm making sure. I don't want any confusion. So we paid $6.3 million this year for those 2 weeks.
Okay.
and it goes up and has escalators to it. And again, we willingly negotiated for that because of the importance to our community and the importance to the industry. It feeds this industry, make no mistake. When you get a Lauderdale Marine Center bought by Safe Harbor for $350 million, they know that when the boat show comes into town, what that's going to mean. It's no different than the mayor advocating for a tunnel or infrastructure or however that ends up under the river. It's the exact same thing. We just need infrastructure at the end of the day. The investments that are being made in our community during the pandemic exceed $2 billion between Palm Beach and Miami in our industry of acquisitions. Now try to go lateral aside from residential or something. Those comparisons in other businesses. It doesn't exist.
Okay. So the current site as it is right now, like if you just go out to Bahia, that working site, how does that work for you from a boat show standpoint? Is that good, bad?
There's no one that doesn't want to see the site improved in some capacity. What we don't want to ever be is a tenant to a developer or an association. We want to be tenant to the city.
Okay.
Because that's who benefits. Equally important from a site plan thing, the best thing, and the developers know this. Look, if it was empty, that would be wonderful. It would be perfect. But again, we also understand that the community wants to improve it and that the city wants to improve it. And so we're on board finding solutions for that.
Okay.
But we have to also understand the unknown is far greater risk to the show than the known. And whatever legal document we know will be challenged. And we won't be here in our capacities, none of us.
Okay. And so the most recent site plan that developer is proposing, are you aware of like the current most recent site plan and evaluate that?
We've looked at the site plan, yeah, and Andrew's
Okay.
weighing in on that right now.
And yeah, I mean, my bottom line question is, how does that look? How does that work with you all for the boat show?
The new site plan works for the show, and we worked obviously with EDSA and Keith and Associates to arrive at a site plan that does work. We have some grave concerns about noise ordinances, even with that site plan. And I think that's why obviously the comfort level, if the lease is bifurcated and the city holds the space where the boat show is, would obviously be more advantageous to the boat show than working, with a condo association and wants to shut work down at 5 o'clock at night or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think, with due respect to a lot of people here, they realize what it takes to put the show in. It's long, it goes late at night, and it's a process that can be aggravating to the tenants there. We have a similar situation in Palm Beach where we're completely on city land, but you've got people that have moved into the area just recently, bought condos next to the show, and the show's been on that site for 30 years, but they would like the show to go away because it's inconveniencing with the traffic and the noise of setting the show up and the show benefiting the industry in Palm Beach County.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't want the show to go away, and we've got to do everything we can. But I'm glad to hear you're suggesting that what you're seeing right now, there's possibility
As
that.
long as it goes through all the departments of the city and everybody signs off on it, because right at the moment, the site plan now, whilst it's going to be an improvement with the amenities for the condos, hotels, whatever, it's a significant financial downgrade for the current show. So as soon as that site plan goes into play, we'll be down $2 million a year.
What do you mean down 2 million a year?
Because there's less space available.
So on the new site plan, you'll have less space than currently.
Yeah.
And when you say down 2 million in what?
Today's money.
In today's money, in what? In revenue and what?
Revenue.
In revenue to the boat show.
Today's revenue.
So the boat show will be diminished
Correct.
with the new site plan.
Right.
From a revenue standpoint.
From the current, but I mean,
From the
obviously.
current.
But we have to.
Plan is better than, the previous site plan. that
Yep.
was approved.
Right. We have to always remember there's an approved site plan from 2017. So what would that do to you if that actually was implemented?
That would be the same, same effect. We would be down.
Down. So, I mean, one of the things, Mayor, is and I just have a question for the city attorney, but we're talking about, so you get, again, you have to pay $6.3 million a year for how long? For 4.
We have a 30-year agreement,
Right.
of which now, I think the first year of the 30-year agreement started this year. So we have 29 years.
But it's for how
Okay.
much use of the space? It's like 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
It's approximately about a month, yeah.
About a month. So for a month, you're paying $6.3 million. What the initial suggestion is
10.8.
is, well, let's just take out taxes because that to
Yeah,
me,
if our
is-
6% return on the 180 million is 10.8 million.
so if you do 6%, but the proposal I saw was, if it was income based, it was 3.7 million, right? Plus transfer fees. So that's a joke compared to, for a portion of the site, what they're getting. So clearly, we've got to strike a much better deal on this. And taxes, by the way, I don't think taxes should be used as part of the revenue assessment. So, Alan, when we look at, let me just see, when we look at this idea of leasing directly with the boat show, leasing with the developer, not leasing with the developer or the association and preferring to lease with the city, is that possible?
I would have to digest that. That's the first I hear of it.
Okay.
So I'm not going to comment on that on the fly. That's something we'd have to look at.
Okay, because I'm assuming the concern, Andrew, is if you lease with a homeowners association or developer, there could be concerns about the viability of the show. Is that right? Okay, so that's helpful for me to understand. I think that's all but anything else to share from a boat show perspective that, as we all work with this, think about? No. Okay, great. So thank you.
So, Andrew, this is the first I've heard that you're going to have a diminished show as a result of even this site plan. Is this because you'll be able to accept fewer rents and
There'll be
less rental
overall
space?
there'll be less space available. Yeah, the in-water space obviously wouldn't change, but the footprint would shrink on land.
Is there any place that you could substitute that space in another location in the city that would allow you to still have exhibitor space and be able to make up for that?
Well, we're really facing, Los Olos goes under construction soon, so we lose that as a staging lot. If Pier South goes under construction, you lose that as a staging lot. So, I mean, the show's under pressure to do what it's got to do now. So I don't think there's, another location where you can recover that income. And the other part is, obviously, Bahia Mar is the 50-yard line. So that's where they want it. People want to be. So even if you found we said, take beach lot and don't have parking over there. That if you did exhibits at beach lot, the exhibitors over there would obviously think that's a lesser value than being directly on the Bahia Mar property.
So that's a major concern. What is Andrew, the 2 million loss in revenue? What's the total number of projected revenue that you're? I'm trying to get a percent decline in possible revenue.
10%.
10%. So you would forecast a 10% decline, possibly less, but possibly more. We don't know, but about 10%. Okay,
So, Mayor,
that's helpful, Mayor.
I need to find out. So, Andrew, in your lease agreement with Ron Bahia Mar, are those kinds of spaces that you just talked about specify, like how much tent space, how much air-conditioned space, how much controlled air-conditioned space? In other words, all of those things that you're saying now are going to be diminished. Are those spelled out at all in the lease, what the requirements are to meet?
I'm not sure if it's shown in an exhibit that just shows that entire area at the parking lot.
So there are no.
I don't think it's spelled out in writing. I think it would just be an exhibit, but
So there's nothing, because I guess I would want to hear from the tenant as well, because I'm just trying to figure out if these numbers are accurate. I want to know why, because I always thought that when we did our meetings, I never heard this. So I've only heard that it was much better than the 2017, and I heard what still needed to happen, and I heard numbers that had to increase in terms of the controlled air-conditioned space, and then those numbers were met. And then the tent space numbers were met. So this is all new information that I did not hear when we met.
So, Commissioner, they've been working on it all the time in terms of internally crunching the numbers and stuff so we can give you an accurate information.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, why didn't I hear it when we met? All I heard was what needed to improve, and I heard the numbers from you in terms of what needed to be for the air-conditioned controlled space, the tent space, the level ground, all those. I have my notes, all the things that were brought up that I was hoping were addressed, but then I never heard what well, all of a sudden now we're facing $2 million loss in diminished space.
So again, in the meetings that we had, we were moving the buildings over, and they had to do discovery, which they did, and they
Right.
moved them over. So all those calculations were calculated post those meetings.
So what are we saying now? So all those calculations were calculated post those meetings, so we're still looking at the diminished space?
I think it was the compromise to work with them to come up with a better solution than the one that was before. But yes, it's diminished.
Okay. And, I don't even remember these conversations when the 2017 site plan was approved, to be honest with you. And that, to me, was a much more egregious site plan in terms of what it did to the boat show. But I don't remember any of these discussions, and obviously I wasn't sitting here.
So
but-
we're at this.
Okay.
So-
All right. Thank you.
It's like
Mayor,
to me, hold on a second.
Go ahead.
The two of you were negotiating, meeting with all parties, right?
Yep.
To me, I feel the same way Steve does, that today, the footprint, something changed. The lease in its own interpretation says that the owners must provide X amount of space, whether it's air conditioning, not air conditioning, to house a boat show. And that's what I thought was agreed upon. Now you're saying they moved the goalposts?
Yeah,
What happened?
I am saying that, actually.
Yeah, so how did that happen? Can someone please explain to me how did that happen with this Fields Group, which you're talking, but you're not showing me anything that space decreased or increased. But each time that we've sent these folks back to do another plan or do something different, it was always based on the boat show saying this is what we want. And I've had more renditions or illustrations than any of you had, other than the mayor, of going back and coming back. And this is the first time we got this close with the boat show. And now you come here today and say that we don't have the space to accommodate this?
So again, it's a live document. Rob's going to speak because he's the one who addresses it on the Informa side.
When we had the 2017 site plan, we weren't permitted to talk about the financial aspects of it or the site plan.
But it's 2021 and
But what about the
Mayor?
space? What about the space? I'm not, regardless
Space.
of the financials, what about, were you allowed to talk about the diminished space in 2017 when that was approved? No?
Well, let me respond to Commissioner McKenzie. When I met with Informa and when I met with
Speak up a little bit, Mayor.
when I met with Phil Purcell, the response that the question I asked was, have you come to a compromise agreement as to a revised site plan that would work for the boat show? And they said yes. This is the first time that I think the commissioner has heard and myself.
Right.
Okay.
What that means is when they say compromise, it means they can live with it. But we didn't know that it also meant that it was going to diminish the size of the boat show at the Bahia Mar site. This is the first time we've heard that confession. And that doesn't sit well with me, and I don't think it sits well with you.
No, but I think we have to clarify, in terms of diminished space and obviously then, diminished revenue, we're actually talking about the site as it exists now, not as the site that's approved in 2017, where that's tremendously different than that. And it's also tremendously different from, I just think we have to compare which different sites we're talking
I think
about.
the 2017 site plan is not really an issue here.
Yeah.
Because we're all past that, and we're trying to see how we can best accommodate the developer as well as the boat show in trying to reconfigure the site plan. So let's just think in terms of, let's not make comparisons of the 2017 site plan as the base, because we really want to see, we have to start with the boat show. The boat show to me is the most important thing. And how do we best accommodate the boat show? Because it is, for all the reasons that Mr. Purcell indicated earlier, what it gives, what it provides to the state and to the Southwest United States, the region, economically, that's the important thing. To see it diminished in any way is troubling. So, so when I was told, in good faith, that the Informa could live with this, I'm sure they said, well, we can live with it. But they probably bit their tongue and said, we are losing money. Phil?
Yeah, let's keep in perspective too that this gag order has kept us at bay so we didn't violate our lease over there for the last several years. So no different than today or any other time, as you guys are aware, we have to ask permission to speak about certain things, period. And all those things come into a big pot of how that show is going to be successful, how it's going to interact, what the setup's going to look like. All that just the site plan doesn't cover. We lose the middle part of that facility, which we're fine with, but we lose it, which we now currently use to access things and stuff. So, Rob Correa is Vice President of Logistics. If Rob could for a second weigh in, no one is trying to, we're making it really clear. We're working very closely with them. We're asking, again, we don't want to be tenant to them or anyone else going forward once the site gets activated.
Hello, Commissioners. It was my understanding when we had
Could you please identify yourself?
Rob Correa.
Speaking to the mic, please.
Rob Correa with Informa. Yeah, so
Hello,
during our meetings, we did have conversations where, we agreed on the revised site plan. But again, to agree to it, we did have to diminish or make the show a little smaller to make it work. But again, it was my knowledge that we did have these discussions during our multiple meetings.
Well, when we had our first meeting together, I specifically went around the room and said, I need to hear what needs to work for you. Where are we now with the site plan? And I had that whole long list of what you guys needed to see changed. And then during the course of further meetings, I was under the assumption that those concerns were met. Again, whether we're talking about moving the restaurant on the northern finger, whether we're talking about creating more of that entranceway in the middle of the property, whether we're talking about moving the hotel 10 feet, I guess, to the south, whether we're talking about the increase in air-conditioned controlled space, whether we're talking about the tent space. So in my mind, coming today, all of the concerns that I heard from you, I felt were addressed. So it's strange for me to hear now, we have diminished space now. Well, I never heard anyone use that terminology when we met, nor in getting reports from when EDSA was meeting with Keith. So that's just new to me. It's just new to me. I mean, I hope you understand. I mean, I hear what I hear. I take copious notes when I meet with people, so I know exactly what I hear. I know exactly what's said. I know exactly what the next steps are. And I was under the impression that through all these last several months, you guys had come to a nice understanding of where we were and how this space could work now. So that's all.
Mayor, I don't know if this is possible, but I feel like I completely understand what the commissioner's saying, and I don't know if there's ways to prevent that, but the ways to prevent that seem to me, if we can just going forward, and I know it'd have to be both parties or multiple parties, but remove a gag or whatever the gag order is so that we can actually have, candid, I don't know if that.
I don't think they really, from what I read in the documents, as long as it's a public hearing where everyone's present, there is no gag order. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, because I was just thinking maybe that limited them from sharing with you. I don't know.
It did at one time.
It did. Yeah.
That's all off the table.
Off the table.
But,
Okay,
but just so now they know that they're free to respond to questions and to talk about.
Even in private meetings, though, they're able to do that?
They are. I confirmed that. They can talk about.
Oh, because I've been told the opposite, only in public.
Is there a problem? Yes. Mr. Tay, you want to come up to the microphone?
And just note, we still don't have a copy of that agreement.
What's that?
We still don't have a copy of that lease as well.
Okay, and if we could get that, I think that would really.
Hold on.
But Phil, why did you say we have a copy of the lease? We don't have a copy of the lease.
Mr. Tate wants to.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, thank you. Just for clarity, when we acquired the leasehold interest, there was a lease in place. That original lease that we acquired did have a prohibition for them to speak. As an inducement to us signing a new lease with them in 2017, one of the things they asked for is to remove that gag order that was put on by the prior tenant landlord, and we did. All we said is, as long as you're going to speak honestly in public forums where we can be there present to understand what you're saying. They've always had that right. Every time they say there's a gag order, I'm sorry, but it's just not a factual statement. Since the 2017 lease was signed, I think it was in May or June, there's never been a gag order. They can come and speak anytime they want about any subject they want as long as we're present and it's at a public forum, or if we're present in a private, we have no problem with that. We've told them that. We've told the commission that. And I'd like them to show you the lease section that has this purported gag because there is none.
So-
Thank you.
Jimmy, just a quick question on that. So if I'm tracking it right, publicly, there's no gag order, but privately, they can't. There is a gag order privately. Am I saying that right?
It's not a gag order. So basically what's
Okay.
happened in the past is exactly what's happening today. We're trying to reach conclusions. We're trying to reach consensus. So we
Right.
go to these meetings, we meet with them in good faith. We have a resolution that we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars getting to this point with all the professionals. We agree on something, and exactly what just happened today happens all the time. They come back and change the story. So we said, listen, no more back office meetings, no more meeting with commission behind our backs. You can meet with them anytime you want. We want to be present. You want to go to a public forum and say whatever you want. Be honest, let us be there.
Just
We
not
don't want the private meetings without us there talking about a lease, which technically no one's in privy with except us or them.
What does the current lease say in terms of leasable space right now?
So the current lease says that we must always give them no less than 100,000 square feet of net leasable space during the development phase, and no less than 125,000 square feet of net leasable space once we're fully developed.
And what are we looking at right now,
Has over
proposal?
154,000 square feet of climate control space, which is what they really want, and it has about 47,500 square feet of regular tent space. But more importantly, we have 7.32 acres of open space, which they can have their food courts and open entertainment areas all along the waterfront. So our current proposal far exceeds the 2017 site plan that they agreed to, that we agreed to, that we all thought we were going forward with the assumption that they were going to help us obtain the extended lease. As a matter of fact, it's in their lease. They get $1 million reduction if we get what's called the city entitlement of city requirements, which is in their lease.
So forgetting the 2017 site plan that's approved, in terms of the space that they have right now, and for instance, the boat show that just concluded, what was the net usable space? What was the space that was required to be offered to the boat show? And what did they
It
have?
says we have to provide them no less than 125,000 square feet.
And the proposal in front of us today conceptually is what?
Tent space, it's 200,000 square feet.
So then I'm not understanding the diminished space.
Bill, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, but let me read, I will, but let me read you something from our current lease. So it's item 20, and we did send the commission and the mayor, actually the Tate sent it to them directly, our lease, I believe, per our request. Am I correct?
I've never seen the full lease.
Well, wait, just respond to
Yeah,
it. Just-
I don't-
We sent it. We can send it again. But in item 20, it says YPI as and its representative and MISF and its representatives agree to not directly or indirectly contact or communicate with the city or its officials or staff from and after the lease signing date. This is our current lease that we have, that's 29 years left now. With respect to Bahia Mar's attempts to obtain any city requirements, other than they shall be permitted to express their position on any such city requirement at any public hearing, considering any such city requirement, or with the consent of Bahia Mar. So it is a gag order. We have to ask permission to do it. We should be able to meet with you on a fact of things without having the landlord present.
Okay, but in terms of, let's get back, Phil?
So, Phil, let me ask you a question.
With regard to the question that was asked, approximately, if you can, how much space has been allotted did you take up this time to put on the boat show?
Andrew's going to take that one because he's better.
Yeah, Andrew.
I think the new plan, that we worked out, is probably 26% less than what's available at the moment.
26%?
Approximately, yeah.
Well, that's just not jiving with the numbers I just heard. So I need someone to explain the delta here. Mayor, that does not jive with the numbers that we just heard of what was used in this show that just concluded versus what's being proposed. So how do we get why the delta between what we just heard?
The delta, if I understood them, is that the new site plan is 25% less?
Than what's currently what we just had in the boat show?
Yes.
But I just heard that that's not what I just heard from the tenant. No, but the tenant just said that it was 125,000 and the new proposal is 200,000. So
I think it was 125,000 minimum,
No.
Commissioner, maybe?
what everyone has to remember is the logistical side, what everyone does. And EDSA has been very good at working with Keese and Associates and things. But the data isn't something we're trying to spring on anyone. It's data that you're crunching the whole time. It's a live document. They just did the show. They said, well, what if? What changes? Let's do this. That's what Rob's job is, to build a city in a matter of weeks and then disassemble it.
Okay, so listening to Andrew, that's the amount of space they use this year, and that's their determination as to what's in the current site plan proposal, and so it's a 25% diminishment, and that's where the $2 million comes from.
That 25% is 1/4. So we're saying that there's 1/4 less usable space on the proposal that we just saw today? I'm sorry. Well, no. Well, you were just giving me that information.
That's just the land and booth portion. Obviously, the in-water stays the same, so that doesn't change.
I'm sorry, Andrew, a little louder. I missed the beginning. I'm sorry.
So it's just the land area that's getting smaller, so it doesn't affect the in-water area. So that's where you might say, what this percentage versus that percentage is.
It's the land side, not the water side.
Right. Okay.
All right. So, all right, we've kind of gone over our time, and we need to come to some. Where do we feel we've come to at this point, Mr. Boileau? What have we determined?
Mayor, can we get the lease? I think, because I don't think the city attorney has gotten the lease, or I think that'd be helpful as we're navigating through all this.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful. I mean, it's more helpful for you than it is for me. That's more on the business side. Honestly, now with the suggestion of the boat show being a separate tenant, that throws things into a mix. So if that's something,
Not there yet, but I just think that
because I don't have any direction yet as to what business model we're going with or what it is we're contemplating moving forward.
well, I guess I'll speak to Commissioner Glassman right now. Commissioner Glassman, we've spoken with these folks, and this is their current offer. We agree on that. It's been presented to the public today. The public has seen it. We've allowed the Informa and Mr. Purcell have had the opportunity to speak today. They've given us some new details which we did not know before. But at the same time, I think the reason why we did not know before is because they felt that they were not permitted to speak with regard to the documents unless it was in a public forum. I'd like to think that prohibition no longer exists, and that we can now perhaps, instead of wasting time discovering these, bombshell revelations, at the 11th hour, because I was hoping we were going to make some decisions today, but we obviously can't. I'm just going to proceed forward in talking with all these parties as if there's no prohibition, whether it be in public or in private, so that we can move this forward. And I think that you would appreciate that too. So you all asked a lot of good questions, and there still remains a lot of answers to be sought. So I guess we're just going to have to adjourn this at this moment, and we're going to go back to the parties and see how we can get closer to where we need to go. I do know that Commissioner Sorensen brought out some really good points with regard to the value of the property and what value we would base our lease rental amount on. And I have to tell you, I share your concern, because I feel that we don't want to shortchange this community. We have a valuable piece of property. We are entitled to a certain amount of rent for it. With or without revenue sharing on the sale of these properties, we can come up with some kind of formula to compensate the community for the use of their land, and I think that we're just going to have to go back to our meeting and just return to. And I don't want to wait this long, though. Are you prepared to see these folks, within the next week or so?
Yeah, I do think we have to, just keep moving. I mean, I'm actually prepared to go further today, but, I'll defer to what you're saying on this, but.
We have a meeting scheduled 2 minutes ago, so we have to respect that. So,
No, I understand. I do. But I just think that we do need to schedule something quickly again. Alan needs to tell us what he needs from us in terms of consensus.
So can you all look at your calendars now and see when we can have another workshop? Do you have your calendar in front of you?
It would be on a commission day, right, Mayor? That'd be best.
Is that best for you?
It's best for me.
So you're looking at the 7th?
Why don't we just do it in lieu of a conference?
Say it again?
Why don't we just do it in lieu of a conference? We sat here from 11 o'clock to now just to defer because we're going to go into a conference meeting. So you should use all of the conference time because we're going to be ambushed by the public.
Ambushed?
That's what I say, because I didn't expect the public to speak today, so I can use whatever terminology I want to use to describe that. So moving forward, public will always be heard at any workshop, and I respect that, and I want that to happen. So let's use the next conference meeting, to deal with this and this in its entirety.
Now, we have a 3-week break now. We could
That's
actually do
fine.
something before then. We have an unusual 3-week break until our next meeting.
I can meet with the parties privately in the interim.
And so can I.
Okay, good. But Chris, don't you have things scheduled for the?
December 7th is a crazy day, isn't it?
Yes, December 7th is a busy day, and we already have an 11:30 scheduled jointly with the Citizen Police Review Board. So
Yeah,
Right, but how about the conference meeting? Do you
Yeah.
have a big schedule for that?
there's a significant number of items on it. I can certainly work with whatever your pleasure is, if we want to move those items to the 21st.
Our pleasure is to have this on that date and no interruptions.
Well, let's see what else we have scheduled, because we had other things that we had scheduled, right? So
Why do we have to wait 3 weeks?
Because it was suggested that we do it on a conference, we do it on a commission day. We don't have to do it on a commission day if you don't want.
We usually only have 2 weeks between meetings. This time we have 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So when are you?
The next Tuesday,
When are you going to speak to him?
the Monday the 29th, which is right after Thanksgiving, I'm available. I mean, my whole day is open.
That's a Monday.
Yeah, it's the lighting of the menorah is the only big thing I have that day.
And that's at 6 o'clock at night.
So
Light the menorah.
if you want to do a special afternoon meeting, Commissioner Sorensen, are you available?
What day are you talking about?
The 29th, the Monday?
Or the 30th, maybe?
Well, there's,
29th is better, actually.
yeah, or the 30th, which is Tuesday.
Again.
I have nothing scheduled for the 30th, except Christmas on Las Olas.
And sorry, and what time are you wanting on the 29th?
Do it at 1:30?
1:30. Yeah, sure. I have some meetings. I can move them around.
Ms.
if
Mayor,
that's-
what is your schedule look like?
I'm good either time, either day.
Okay, so why don't we schedule this, Chris, how does that look on your schedule?
It's going to require I move around a bunch of stuff, but we can make it work.
All right, so which is best for you, Monday or Tuesday, folks?
Monday's better than Tuesday.
Monday.
So when we say Monday at 1:30, we'll continue with the workshop, and hopefully we can get some public input at that time. I'm sorry, folks, that you didn't have time to do it today.
29th.
All right.
That's not necessary. It's not necessary. Shut up. But it's not. It's not necessary. We're serious about moving this. No, I'm not going to entertain that stuff. I'm serious about getting this done. And you got what you want. Every time you have a workshop, it's a public input. You got it. It's consistent, and we're going to do it every single time we have a workshop. I don't care if it's about poop in the park. We're going to have a public input.
Meeting adjourned. We'll be back in 15 minutes.
Oop.